Well, hello, Manitoban friends. Thanks so much for tuning into this video. I wanted to reach out to you because today we have filed, ARPA Canada has filed our written brief in the Gateway Bible Baptist Church versus the Government of Manitoba. Last week, Chief Justice Joyal granted ARPA Canada intervenor status in this case, and ARPA was given permission by the court to file a 20-page written factum or legal brief, and we will also be able to make a 30-minute oral presentation to the court during the hearing. So this is an 8-day trial or an 8-day hearing starting on April 19th and going until the end of the month. And this is a case involving churches who have challenged the absolute prohibition of corporate worship for the period of 13 weeks at the end of 2020 and the beginning of 2021, and challenging that under the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, as well as under other legal arguments. We're particularly concerned about the charter arguments. And so these churches are arguing that the absolute prohibition and other various severe restrictions on corporate worship violate Section 2A, 2B, 2C of the Charter, that is freedom of religion, freedom of expression, and freedom of peaceful assembly. And that these infringements of these freedoms are not justified or not reasonable in the circumstances. And so ARPA Canada wants to intervene on this case and on these questions as well, to bring ARPA's and the Reformed perspective directly to bear in this case. Now, perhaps you have some concern about ARPA intervening in this case. Perhaps you feel that if we were to intervene, that would show a form of disrespect to the civil government, or a form of support for perhaps some messaging or some actions by churches that you don't think have acted properly. And I'd say respectfully that that's somewhat beside the point. With this case is proceeding whether you or I like it or not. Maybe you're very excited that this case is proceeding. Maybe you're very disappointed that this case is proceeding. But those are facts that are beyond our control. The reality is this case is proceeding. Chief Justice Joyal will hear for 8 days arguments from the government of Manitoba and arguments from the lawyers representing these churches. And so the question that ARPA had to ask and answer is not whether or not we should be supporting the government or whether or not we should be supporting these particular churches, but rather, is there benefit to bringing a distinctly reformed biblical perspective to the court in this case? And we said, yes, there is. There must be benefit, because we believe that Scripture has principles that apply to all of life, including the courts and government responses to things like pandemics and so on. And we want to bring that perspective to bear in this case. And so, I wanted to share that with you, and I also wanted to invite you to review our written arguments. So those have been filed today, and they're also available on our website. If you go to arpacanada.ca, you can find our written arguments there. Please do, you're invited to read them. It's 20 pages long, and so maybe it's a bit daunting, but I think actually we've written it in a way that fellow Christians, if they picked it up and read it, they'd say, oh yeah, I see exactly where this argument is going. I relate to the argument, that the language will be relatable, I think, to you, whether you're a lawyer or not. And again, we have to remember the role and the place of the courts in our parliamentary democracy, our constitutional democracy. We have to remember that in Canada, we are governed, or we are governed by multiple branches of the civil government, that the civil government is not just a chief public health officer or not just a premier, although we must show respect to those men or women who hold that office, absolutely. Those are not the only government actors. In fact, there's 3 branches to the government. There's the executive branch, which would include the chief public health officer and the premier. There's the legislative branch, which is the one supposed to be passing the laws and keeping checks and balances on the executive in that regard. And then there's also the judiciary, right? That's a 3rd branch of the government, and they also make sure that the other 2 branches of government honor the Constitution and pass laws that are fair and just and right. And those 3 branches keep each other in check under the umbrella of the Constitution. Right? We are a country ruled by law. the rule of law is a foundational principle. It's a gift of Christendom, actually. And that is that we're not ruled by the whims and the preferences of particular men or women who hold a certain amount of power, but rather we're ruled and governed by law. And every law must be demonstrably justifiable. They have to be anyone passing such a law or issuing an order like a public health order must be able to give evidence that these are necessary, they're required in a free and democratic society. We should be thankful for that. We should be thankful that we can test these kinds of rules and restrictions carefully in a forum such as courts. And so I'll close with this. First of all, thank you so much for hearing me out, and please do engage with our written arguments. If you still have concerns, please do reach out to me personally. You can email me at André, A-N-D-R-E, at arpacanada.ca, and I'll try my very best to get back to you if you do have any concerns. Regardless of whether or not you're very excited about ARPA intervening in this case, ambivalent about it, or very concerned about it, we do ask for your prayer, that you would pray that through this hearing, that justice and righteousness would prevail, that you'd pray that God would give Chief Justice Joyal a rich measure of wisdom as he rules on this case, and that you would pray that the ministry of the church, as restrained or restricted as it has been over the last year, that the ministry of the church can continue into 2021. Pray also for the unity of the church, that despite some deep differences, that we still remain united, recognizing each other as brothers and sisters in the Lord, and that together we can work out some of our differences with a sense of understanding and a desire to pursue truth and justice and mercy through all of this. So thank you so much for your time, and God bless you, and we'll keep you up to date as this case progresses.